they were put on probation for potentially?
Yes. We need to do our best to incarcerate less and put fewer people on probation. And the level of supervision is really what you're talking about, in my opinion, because certain offenders, recidivists in particular, require more supervision, and that requires more resources. Other people, particularly first-time offenders, don't need probation because they don't need us to watch over them because they've never done anything wrong before. So they need to have a responsibility or a program that requires them to take responsibility, like a diversionary program, that doesn't require them to go through a year of probation, which has become sort of standard for a lot of felonies here in Florida. And there's no reason it needs to be standard. It's not in the law anywhere that it has to be. It's just the way it is and the way it's become. There was a study, so the Florida legislature commissioned a study in 2018 by the Criminal Justice Institute. And if I read this wrong, you tell me. Because it'll blow your mind. It blew my mind. The Florida prison population grew 373% from 1978 to 2015. And the reason, the studied reason for that was drug offenses and drug sentences, which have gotten longer and longer and longer. And guess what? They impact a proportionate population. So the question becomes, how do we reduce those incarceration rates, in my mind? Because I want to start by reducing incarceration, then we can start about reducing probation. Because probation is bad, but it's not as bad as being incarcerated. If I'm wrong, Ms. Goolsby, you let me know. Right. So the first thing is, how do we reduce incarceration? One of the things we do is we get rid of, and I said get rid of, minimum mandatories for drug offenses, right?
Explain what those are.
And I'll use an obvious one that everybody can understand. Oxycodone. Person gets injured at work, they hurt their back, their doctor, if you've been to a doctor recently, you know they'll give you oxycodone for almost anything, though they're starting to cut back, and they get hooked on oxycodone. Then they get a prescription that belongs to their neighbor. They're driving down the road, they get pulled over, and they have a prescription bottle full. And that can cause you to go from anywhere from 3 years of prison up to 25 years or more of prison just for possessing it, because under the law, possessing is trafficking. What does incarcerating a person with no prior history who's got an addiction to drugs for 25 years do for us? And yet that's the law. And Ms. Barrow will tell you that when that's the law, we have very few options under that scenario as prosecutors. There's a bill right now in the Florida House to eliminate minimum mandatories for drug sentences. And there's a lot of bipartisan support in the Senate, though not in the House, for doing that very thing. But to me, the first obvious step that I would support as a state attorney, because I agree with Ms. Barra that the state attorneys need to stop complaining about the laws and start telling our legislators what will actually do some good, and pass this bill so that, and I'm not talking about things like heroin and fentanyl, which are dangerous and are only used by drug dealers, but things like oxycodone, hydrocodone. We need to roll back these minimum mandatories so that we don't keep incarcerating people essentially forever.